What is the ideal way of eating? We certainly live in a food-dominated culture, but it can be tough to identify what we should or should not be eating. Even if we know what is healthy and what isn't, temptation lurks around every corner, and many of us have picked up some unhealthy habits or thoughts about food that can be tough to shake. Fortunately, when we break things down, a minimal way of eating can heal and nourish us in a positive way.
And with that, we'd like to welcome everybody to the Abundantly Minimal podcast. My name is Jake. You just heard Sarah moments ago. And our goal is to help you create abundance throughout your life by living intentionally. Today is episode 12, where we are going to discuss minimalism through the lens of our relationship to the food we consume.
I love that line.
I know. Pat myself on the back.
Yay, you get a raise.
I wish.
I know. We're actually not making any money from this, but it's fun.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
Mm-hmm.
We're making a difference.
Preach.
All right. So anyway, I'm super excited. It's about time we're talking about food on this podcast. I mean, I think we've hinted at it a little bit, but honestly, I feel like this is one of the most important topics. Am I right?
Ever
That's ever been spoken.
Never. Wait. That didn't make sense. But yeah.
Never say never, Jake.
It's pretty, never say never.
Okay, please. I hope if you just heard that, please do not click away.
Please continue listening. There's more where that came from.
Oh. Well, anyway, let's talk a little bit about how Americans eat, because I think we need to kind of set the stage. I think in general, people have the perception that the way of eating in the U.S. is not particularly healthy, but I feel like sometimes it's a little bit worse than people actually realize. So, and some of this I actually found more about for my previous master's class I was in. I'm working on my master's degree in education, and my main topic was looking up school lunches and student health and how it affects student health in the classroom and overall well-being. And it's so clear in all of these different facets with students, but just like our health and what we're putting in our bodies makes such a difference. And there is a lot to kind of deal with related to food, different attitudes, different societal pressures. It can be pretty intense. And I know for myself, my health journey's kind of evolved over time. But regardless, as far as some basic details or kind of stats related to what we're eating, there's a great chart that I'll put in the link, and I'll put a link for in the show notes, but basically it compares dietary intakes of various different food groups compared to what the recommendations are. And now with this, the recommendations I feel like are mostly pretty good. We personally follow a vegan diet, which there is actually a link in this guide about how that's a really healthy diet and how that can be a really good diet. But I'm not going to get into that as much today, but looking at just societally, what are people consuming too much or too little of? So here's something that's startling. Roughly 84% of Americans are not getting enough vegetables. About 76%. I'm analyzing a chart, so that's why I don't have exact numbers right now. About 76% of people are not getting enough fruit. About 43% are not getting enough grain. But I'm guessing also they're not getting the right types of grains, looking at whole grains rather than refined grains. 85% of people are consuming too much dairy. About 72% of people are consuming too much oil. And while they don't have as clear numbers for saturated fats, sugars, and sodium, those also are still issues. And so when we think about that, there's a lot of room to grow there. And I think that having some of these excess unhealthy items, such as sugars, excess fats, oils, dairy, like looking at some of these excess amounts that we are consuming and that people are not consuming the right amount of stuff, these can really play a role negatively in our health, and not getting enough of the good stuff. It's just like there's some major shifting that needs to happen here.
I think it's kind of interesting that, you know, everything that you said, it really doesn't surprise me because, I mean, when you think about it, the whole idea of health, I mean, not for everybody, obviously, but for, I think, the majority of Americans, or at least the majority of people that I personally know, I obviously can't speak for everybody, but the whole health thing seems to be more of a joke than something that's actually taken seriously. I mean, to some degree, on some level, everybody realizes whether or not they are being healthy. I mean, you can tell that pretty easily by just like how easy it is for you to move, and whether or not you are changing, I guess, in body size from what you were before in a way that's a little bit unsettling to you or some way. Then the thing is that people still continue to eat the dairy, or eat, you know, a heavy amount of meats, or continue to eat the ice cream, sugar, the desserts, the sugar, all that stuff. Until we actually start
taking it seriously,
consciously, like taking it as serious as like unconsciously that we do, so to speak, I think that you're going to continue to see those kinds of problems. But yeah, the fruits and veggies, that's always like the big thing is, you know, you need to eat your vegetables, but we look at fruits and vegetables in almost a negative way. Like, even though that there are some of the healthiest foods that we can be eating, they have this stigma of just being yucky or being nasty tasting,
or at the very least a side, not a main dish themselves.
Sure. And I mean, I guess like the caloric intake of lots of fruits and vegetables, not all, but a lot, I guess I can understand that a little bit. But as far as like, I mean, if you actually think about it, that's where like all of the different sorts of vitamins and minerals are for the most part going to be coming from, and the antioxidants and what else you want to throw in,
and even
there.
The water to help keep you hydrated.
Right. But for whatever reason, and I think a lot of it also too is like, it goes back to like what the government subsidizes, and it's part of, you know, what people's values are. But, you know, some of the foods that are like subsidized more are going to be like your coins. Yes, eat pennies. Your corn and soybeans versus, I mean, they're going to be a lot cheaper as a result for you to buy than like a head of kale or like a thing of beets, right? So I think that, I mean, that plays a role too in furthering the problem, because it's like a vicious cycle, you know, that's going to then prevent, I think, some people from shifting, in part because, I mean, not just what you're familiar with eating, but also what's more affordable and what's cheaper for you to get. I mean, if that's the case, you're less likely, I think most people are less likely to make that conversion.
Well, absolutely, because if things are so heavily subsidized, they're not actually paying for it the full price, and the market's going to do what it's going to do. The reason corn syrup's in so many things and related corn byproducts and like 80% of the processed foods in the grocery store, it's because it's so cheap. That's the main reason. There's no nutritional benefit whatsoever, but yet it's in everything, because if that's the cheapest thing, keep prices down, quote unquote. But again, it's just because of the subsidies, really. Mm-hmm. If everyone was growing fields of different produce and vegetables, I can't imagine the rich variety of local produce and fresh foods that could be available at the cost, like at such a low cost. That would be truly exciting. But I think also too, I want to give power to the people, but I think a lot of people just, you know, I think it's okay in society, in American society as a whole, to just not care about your health and to be able to be like, well, you know what? So what? I'm overweight. So what? That I'm probably only going to live till 70. So I'm just going to focus on having fun. And I guess that's a little bit of a harsh thing. Myself, I used to be, you know, somewhat overweight as well. And it's not an ideal place. I'm not trying to, you know, be hurtful towards anyone who is struggling with their weight. But I think ultimately, the information is out there, and I think through some of the practices we're going to get on today, and we'll discuss ways that we can have a more positive relationship with our food and how we can really switch this around. But I think these are good points to acknowledge.
One thing I want to say too, like not to like put people who are over their desired weight or over the quote unquote healthy way on the bus. You know, coming from the complete opposite perspective, I mean, being fully honest with you, I some days don't even weigh like 120 pounds, which is considered underweight for what somebody of my stature, like what, 5'9", 5'10", whatever I am, like I'm supposed to be. I mean, this is like kind of a conversation. If you're like in that neck of the woods, it still applies to you too. I mean, just because like I'm like very skinny and always have been, doesn't mean that I'm like any healthier than somebody who's on the other end of the spectrum. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I mean, for my entire life, even I would say now, I'm definitely closer, but not perfect with it. I've been in like the 85% that Sarah mentioned, like that doesn't get enough vegetables, the 74 that doesn't get enough fruit. I mean, my diet growing up was pretty much all of your like processed foods, like those like frozen pizzas or meats, and not my entire diet. I mean, we had home cooked meals and whatnot too, but a good chunk of my diet was like that processed stuff, eating like for snacks or eating at school or for breakfast, like your Pop-Tarts, like whatever. And like, yeah, people always would say like, how do you stay so skinny? But just because of that doesn't make that me any healthier. Just because I've started to make these recent changes now, I've started to notice just like how unhealthy, even though it doesn't physically show, how unhealthy that I've been for all this time.
Well, it's amazing, too, how individual foods can make you feel so much better. Mm-hmm. Like, do you want to talk about the green drink?
Yeah, let's talk about it. And also just keeping in mind, I'll admit, at the time of this recording, I haven't drank it in like a couple days.
Well, that's because we're out.
We're kind of out, so...
We need to buy more green powder.
But in any case, yeah, I got to get my powder.
But we made celery juice yesterday, and that was really good.
Very good. Anyway, though, this green powder. I've been using this green powder... Genesis Today, is that what it was?
Yeah.
It was a clearance brand from a natural food store that was by us. I mean, clearance, it was on clearance for like a little over $20, I think. So like full price, it would have been somewhere in the 40s. So
hold on real quick. I'm sorry. I just looked ahead at the notes, and down the how you eat section, I didn't realize, but yeah, because I wrote the goal of eating is to nourish, and then you added not to become bloated and full of farts. Like what? Sorry. Okay.
I'll mention that later.
Okay. Continue.
But anyway, so the green drink that I've been drinking, it's got like, I don't know how many different kinds of fruits and vegetables in it. I mean, like the list,
76.
Okay, 76, and it has, I think, billions of probiotics. Don't ask me how many billion. It's a lot of billion. Like just, it's a lot, you know. And so, ever since I started drinking this stuff, long story short, because like I said, I was an 85% who don't get enough of their vegetables. I don't know if it was like a placebo effect or if it was like the real deal. I think it was the real deal because I just felt better. But after drinking that stuff, which is not the most tasty thing, it literally looks like pond scum that you're drinking and putting in a glass. But after you drink it and you get past the taste, again, that's not why you're drinking it, for the taste. You're drinking it for the nourishment. Yeah. Not to become bloated and full of farts, as I like to say.
Oh my God.
But I felt like instantaneously like better, like within like 30 seconds to a minute. Sometimes even it felt like this is probably a placebo, but like as I was drinking it those first few times, I was like, man, like my brain was like all like hazy and cloudy and whatnot. All of a sudden, like it just kind of like cleared up, you know, almost automatically. And
I'm guessing that is placebo, except that it is like such a strong taste.
Well,
that it's like, ugh.
The first few times I think it did. Now if I drink it, it doesn't do that same. I don't feel that same thing anymore. But I mean, I do notice that these last couple days that I haven't had it, I felt worse than like this past week where well, it's true. The days I did have it, it definitely, I think having even that extra bit of nutrients, which coming from someone who's not getting enough, even still after going vegan, pretty profound how just getting that nutrition that you don't have otherwise, how that like changes just your mood and how you perform like during the day and your mental state and emotional state. And
sure. Let's think a little bit. How are we eating? And when I say we, I don't mean just us, but in society right now, what are some of the issues? And in general, I think all of these issues we'll kind of address as we look more into what a minimalist way of eating looks like. But regardless, I think obviously there's the eating too much side of things. There's the side of eating too little, for sure, and not getting what we need. There is basically eating based on calories and not on nutrients, which I think is very common. I know they did recently put in the new laws for what the food labels look like, and we've seen a couple of food items. And I think I remember first when I saw that, I was actually really excited because I thought they were doing some good things. But as I have learned more about food and reflected on it more, I'm not a huge fan. One of the things they've done is to make the calories much larger, which I think, yes, putting the calories has a purpose, but I don't think they tell the full picture, because a person can easily be getting the right amount of calories that they need, but it doesn't tell you anything about what types of calories those are or the nutrition there. And so, you could be eating 2,000 calories of Oreos and, that's the right number of calories you need, but you're going to be pretty deficient in pretty much everything good.
Right size, wrong shape, so to speak. Well, right size of the calories, wrong.
Is that a phrase?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess.
It is a phrase. I stole it somewhere.
But the eating too much thing, I think that's something that I've struggled with, I guess, during college. And I'll get more into that a little bit later. But then also eating, not eating enough. I think, Jake, you've been on that side of things too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't eat enough. That's not good. I know.
I think sometimes too, people have tough relationships. I guess I'll just go into the next category too. I think that people have negative relationships with food sometimes because they're unhappy with their body size or shape or whatever. And then they think that they know what's best for their body and just make a sudden change. So I'm not going to list any specific individuals, but I did run a cooking club through my school, and what I found, there was even a student who said, and this is like a middle school kid, who said that he was going to skip a bunch of meals this summer to try to lose weight. And I just told him, that is the opposite of what we want to do. Like, it's not a simple, if I just skip some meals, I'm going to lose weight. It is kind of complex, but you have to focus on the nutrient size, and you have to make sure you're getting the basic nutrients that you need. And just shifting your diet to focus more on these nutrients is going to help, with the weight side of things. Likewise, if someone is, I guess I don't know anyone personally who's trying to do this, but I feel like would you say that there's the pressure for like young guys to like bulk up massively? Oh yeah,
otherwise you get picked on or you're kind of ostracized. It seems like, yeah.
And I think the market's done a good job, I guess, because it's convinced people to be obsessed with protein and like, oh my gosh, I need to get more protein. Like, we get a lot as vegans sometimes. Like, I've had students ask me,
where do you get your protein?
Yeah. But what's so hilarious to me is that, like, look around you. There are tons of situations of people who like suffer from heart disease, obesity, diabetes, all these diseases of abundance, meaning they've gotten too much of food. And everyone's worried about like protein deficiency, which, newsflash, there's nothing out there of like, oh, this poor American died because of protein deficiency. Because here's the deal. If you're eating enough food, you're not going to be protein deficient. If you're not eating and you're suffering from a various eating disorder, then yeah, that's a different story. But that's not protein deficiency. That's just overall food deficiency. So I think that's a key point just for people to think about. If you're eating, you're getting enough nutrients. And I think it's always funny too when people I guess this sounds a little snarky, but when people have concern about my diet, when honestly, like, I have so much more nutrition knowledge than they do. And it's just like, okay, let's see what you're eating. I don't know. There's been a couple situations.
Getting feisty here. One thing with the how we eat thing, I guess going back to that, I don't know if you mentioned, this kind of ties into what you're saying, but we eat more so for pleasure, I think, than we eat for...
good concept to talk about.
Than we eat for nutrition-wise. Which is, I think, again, something that has to change within a person or a community of people if we're ever going to see, I guess, some of these results that we're seeing go down a little bit. It doesn't make any sense to be eating a fast food hamburger compared to like a a kale salad or something like that.
Because sometimes people think, well, I don't want to eat kale salad. I mean, like a burrito bowl.
Fine, burrito bowl, whatever. But like, I mean, there are just certain like foods that we're eating. We eat it solely because of the taste. That's why our diet's so bad, is because we're all obsessed with taste. I mean, that goes back to the fruit and vegetable thing. And like, you don't eat fruits and vegetables because they're yucky, because they don't have all of the salt and fat and everything that these other foods do that make them taste objectively really good. Yeah, but they make you feel awful afterward. You certainly pay that price.
But here's the secret. When you shift your diet, your taste changes. And the beauty is that even if you change your diet to a lot healthier, you actually don't feel like you're missing out if you can stick with it. This exact same thing has happened for us. I went from being like obsessed with dairy and like loving cheese, ice cream, yogurt. Not really ever a huge fan of milk. It's kind of it repulses me really bad now. But I was having the first week I went vegan and stopped. I really cut out the dairy. I was craving it so badly the first week. But then my taste changed and I didn't care about it anymore. And right now, honestly, the thought of any of it, even cheese, which I used to like love, it repulses me. Like genuinely repulse. I have no desire to eat it anymore. Even the good stuff like that I used to really enjoy. So it's amazing how your taste can change. Likewise, they do say, I think it's 12 times you need to eat something or try something before you actually develop a taste for it and like it. But that's the thing. Like if you kind of stick with it, maybe the first couple times of trying something, you're not a huge fan. But if you stick with it, if it's something you want, then again, within too much time, the tastes do change. It's just like that green drink you were talking about.
It does get better, folks.
I might cut some of that out.
Eat the food, and the taste will come. It's like Field of Dreams, but with food of dreams.
Wow.
Yeah, clever. Not really, but in any case, like Sarah said, just reconditioning and changing around your diet. I guess coming from my perspective, I kind of just became a vegan and ate healthier just because I'm not the one who cooks anything. My idea of a good time for a good day is, has always been peanut butter sandwiches, and then some of your frozen processed junk was my thing. And now really even left to my own devices, it's pretty much a bowl of oats in the morning, be a peanut butter sandwich for lunch, and then big bowl of pasta for dinner. And that'd be it, which obviously, yeah, you notice those fruits and veggies that are missing. I ate bananas on the side too, though. So what's up? But no, but just by the default of when Sarah went vegan and she stopped making anything that had, I wasn't eating anything with meat with Sarah. I was a omnivore when we first crossed paths. I don't know. It is true from somebody who would never have gone vegan if they weren't around somebody who went vegan. Truly is, as you eat these new types of food and like that's what you eat. I mean, at first, yeah, like the stuff was kind of like, oh, I mean, it wasn't terrible. I wasn't really excited about it though. I mean, still, unfortunately, lentils. I just can't really get into that.
Oh, whiny about lentils.
But I can say though, I can eat them a lot easier than I could at the beginning, where I was like, man, this is just like kind of sad. But I didn't complain because I wasn't making dinner. So I gladly ate anything that was there. Yeah, after a while, like kind of the same thing. I don't really, being vegan, I don't eat anything that has got dairy in it or eggs or milk and then the meats, I cut all of that out, and I've been fine with eating what doesn't contain all of that stuff, whether it be fruits and vegetables or your beans, other legumes, your grains. I never was a really big dessert guy, so I guess cutting all of that out wasn't really too bad.
Although you can still make any kind of dessert you want.
No, I'm saying you still can.
And I do.
Yeah. You still can. Sarah does. But just saying, for me, that was one thing I didn't have to switch over to something else. Like, it wasn't as big of a deal for me because I wasn't really eating that much of it to begin with. But yeah, it's definitely possible if you just really want it and you're willing to. One thing I tell people who, when they do ask, like all two of them, when they like ask, about the whole vegan thing, like, don't you miss like the other food? It's like, well, I mean, you have new food that you weren't eating before that.
Probably way more, honestly.
Way more, but also like as long as you understand that the new food is not really going to replace the old food, like, you know, a hamburger and a black bean burger are not exactly, they're not the same thing, and that's fine. I mean, if you're going into it like you need the perfect replacement for a hamburger, although the Beast Burgers actually are pretty dang close, I would say. But if you take the new food in its own right and for what it is, like it's good stuff, like you're going to be fine.
Well, and also too,
okay.
it has to all do with the fat and salt and sugar that are added to things. So it's like, you know, if someone's like, oh, meat is so delicious. Well, okay, if it's truly delicious, a non-meat alternative is gross. Let's see what happens when you remove all the fat, all the salt and seasonings, and you don't cook it. You just eat it raw, like just a hunk of meat, like flesh. Is that delicious? Because here's the, this is the way I see it. You know, people are like, oh, this kale is so gross because I'm just eating a plain piece of kale with no fat and salt on it, whatever. And then like, oh, this cooked, I don't even know, this cooked bacon or steak or whatever is so good. But I really think it's just the seasoning and the fat and some other things. Because let me tell you, I make a pretty mean kale salad with a variety of seasonings. I've got a Caesar dressing that's like with tahini. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Like when you add the seasoning to everything, then yeah, it tastes good, whatever the main main part of it is. I think another key here to address has to do with moderation as well. Now, I don't like the way people throw around the word moderation, like everything in moderation.
Well, moderation, what is moderation then? What is moderation is for you is going to be very different than it is for me.
Well, and also what's funny too is like, this was actually, there's a YouTube channel called Mind Over Munch. This is a while ago, but she made like a rant video about moderation. It's like, think about how you define it. You know, if I'm having cupcakes in moderation, I have a cupcake today, and then I have donuts in moderation tomorrow and have a donut. Like, it's not, I think sometimes we can use it as an excuse. But regardless, I think that there is merit in moderation, because if you are someone who's kind of on the deep end of like really unhealthful living and eating, if you even just start to make some small changes like that, we're not saying that doesn't matter. Like that matters a whole lot. But again, we're not perfect health wise either. I know I have done so much better than what I used to do, but for me, we traveled last weekend and we got some epic cupcakes. That's what you could see on my Instagram right now, that there's some cupcakes there. And, it's like, that's fine to incorporate here and there, but we don't have to try to be perfect with it. But I think sometimes we get discouraged. If we can't do everything, then we're not even going to try to do something. But something matters. Something makes a difference.
Something is more than nothing.
Absolutely.
You've heard it here, folks.
So we've already been chatting quite a while, but I think my sort of story with food over time does kind of incorporate a variety of some of the problems that we've talked about that some people have. I know for me, I had a relatively negative body image when I was younger. Not like super younger, but what's funny is I never really saw myself as a skinny person, like when I was in middle school, high school, etc. And what's crazy is when I look at pictures, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was so skinny, like just like really skinny. And I think there's other people out there who feel like maybe they are, especially girls. I don't know, anyone could maybe feel that way, but who feel like they're not skinny or they're not skinny enough for societal standards or whatever it is. I think it's so interesting to come from that place when you look back years later, and obviously bodies have changed a little bit and you see the difference, and it's like, wow, I can't believe I thought that. I was like, oh, I was very unhappy with my appearance because of that. So I think that's really interesting perspective. But then what I struggled with, I was a very active kid in high school, running with track kind of like year round, exercising about 2.5 hours a day. And then I went to college where I was still being pretty active, but because I wasn't keeping it up at the same level, and also I was getting a couple hours less sleep per night, I did start to put on weight. And like there's the stereotypical freshman 15. I think for me it was like a freshman 30 or 40. It was kind of a big body change, and I was, not really thrilled with that. And I was trying to do all these like little approaches to things. and I wasn't really having much success with it. So I'd bring my textbooks to the gym, be on the elliptical for like 80 minutes and, say I burned off 600 calories or something like while I was doing my homework. Other times I'd be like so mathematical with stuff. I did have some disordered eating during, especially like freshman year of college. I was also dating a guy at the time, which, he was like very regimented about his health and avoided all desserts. Well, I'm someone who loves desserts. And if I had some weird ideas, I had a weird relationship with food. So like if I was eating with him, like in the dining hall where all freshmen go, I would not eat any dessert. But then I would like have these weird like dessert cravings and like afterwards and then my roommate at the time too, it was an interesting situation because she was so tiny and skinny and then I was not. And she just ate like garbage. Like she had a giant jar of peanut M&Ms by her bed and like they would just taunt me. And she'd just like eat Pop-Tarts and other stuff. I swear she hardly went to that dining hall. But regardless, so like those are some of the places where some of my negative food ideas kind of came from. And I did manage to kind of have a lot more of a positive body image, being more respectful of that. What is interesting though, then, eventually too, like it's ironic that year I was like, oh my gosh, I was not eating enough meat when I was younger. Like, I talk about that in one of my videos too, like why I don't eat meat anymore. But with that situation, I was eating a lot of meat freshman year of college. And after a while, I kind of realized, oh my gosh, maybe that's also part of the reason. So then like after I gave up the meat, I stopped gaining weight as quickly. So that was cool. I was still gaining. And that's the thing too. It's like all my little plans that I would try to do and nothing ever worked. Like I was never actually getting skinnier and losing weight. And so that was frustrating. I did go the fully vegetarian route. And then after a while, I think at like my heaviest point, which is where I was like 180 pounds, pretty much, which that's a little uncomfortable to put that out there, I guess, but I've been very happy with results since then. But basically, at that point, I was like, you know what, we actually watched a vegan documentary at that point, and the health motivation was not the number one, but I mean, it's a major part of going vegan is that it can dramatically improve your diet. And what's been really cool, it's been gradual, but over the past 2 years or so, I have lost 25 pounds and I'm not someone who actively goes to the gym all the time, not someone who is very disciplined about like not eating excess desserts. I mean, I think I had like 5 cupcakes the other day that I'd made. They were really good, sweet potato cupcakes from Chef Chloe. But regardless, it's still something I am working through, but I think overall, just where I'm at, my body confidence has changed a lot. And I feel like I'm actually more so the size that I should be, I guess. But before, when I was in my heavier stage, I was just like, you know what, this isn't me. Like, I am too healthy of a person in terms of the nutrients to, get to this point. I've also started listening more to my body, and if I'm not hungry, I don't eat. I know I love, love, love cooking, and also just a pressure of mine, and maybe Jake can attest to this, but a pressure of mine has been that we both have very different weight goals. Like Jake tries to gain weight, I try to lose weight. And so it's really tough to try to balance that with the type of foods you cook, because there are a lot of different ways that you can cook to adjust for and account for different needs. It's been really helpful for me to just kind of really be focused on, am I actually hungry or am I just trying to eat because of these other reasons?
Kind of to conclude all of this, we're going to look at how do we find balance? And I mean, Sarah just told you her saga of her then and now, which I think is very, very awesome to hear. And
we can still talk more about the now, because that's going to come up with the minimalist way of eating.
As you know, like we both said that we're vegans. From, I think Sarah agrees with this, my end, too. Definitely not perfect by any means. I mean, no one ever is, but always the goal is to try to strive to be as close as you can. But focusing on that and something else just kind of goes with the whole food debate, and depending on who you are and where you're listening from, and this is a hot debate, but the whole idea of like non-GMO foods and trying to eat organic when possible, that's something that we both really value. In our particular area, I don't think that that's really a high priority.
But I think overall the market is drastically changing.
It is increasing for sure. But being conscious of that kind of stuff when we're buying our food, no high fructose corn syrup is always something to be looking for as far as health wise. But just trying to make sure, like, also like me, I refuse to eat anything now with any sort of like food coloring. Even like someone offered me like a piece of gum, and I was like, no, I can't do this because there's this stuff in there. Food color. Food color always kind of freaked me out though. Like even before I got
and
into
excessive consumption of foods with food color has been linked to various health. So
I think looking at all of that as far as what we're doing and trying to keep it ethical, going back to the minimalism part, trying to eat for what you actually need. I know that I guess it doesn't really help me with the trying to gain weight part of, my life that I've tried to do, or I guess said I was going to do. I haven't really given it the full-blown effort yet, but I definitely eat a lot less than I used to, and I don't always, for the most part, eat to the point. Like before, like the whole thing was like, let me eat until I literally can't eat anymore, until like I'm full. Now I kind of
overstuffed.
Well, yeah, just stuffed in general. Now I don't really do that. I think more of the time I actually leave a meal, I think, hungry versus stuffed, which, I mean, the goal is to not be hungry either. So hence why I need to eat a little bit more food. But
I think your issue too is you forget to eat. Like if you get stressed, you don't eat, or if I'm not home and there's nothing easy you can prepare, you don't eat.
Hey,
like I'll get home.
Easy.
Oh my gosh.
Little noodles.
If I'm staying late for work for like an event or something and I come home at 9, I'll be like, so what'd you have for dinner? A banana.
Hey, I just told them my pasta, or sometimes oats for dinner. I change it up. I did once make a tofu scramble, which Sarah, she definitely gave me compliments on.
It was really good.
It was fantastic. I am capable.
You got that from that was a great recipe where you got it from.
So check out Abundantly Minimal's YouTube channel, and you can learn.
Those are so old now.
But they're still tried and true, folks. They helped me.
Well, and a minimalist way of eating. Now, this again can vary for different people. As far as how we've kind of defined it, I feel like there's 5 key parts. Trying to eat in a way that's healthy, affordable, simple, not eating too much, and ethical is a really great balance. And I think it's something we're definitely on our journey towards, but we're not perfect with it, of course. Thinking of healthy foods, mostly healthy foods, trying to focus on the nutrient density. When you are thinking about eating an item, does that have actual nutrition, or is it just a bunch of garbage all mixed together with some fat, salt, and sugar to make it delicious? Is it affordable? I don't think that healthy eating needs to be expensive. I think that there's a lot of great food bases, especially thinking of your grains and beans, that can be so affordable. And that's something that I'm passionate about with it. Thinking about simple things, you don't have to be a fancy cook to be able to eat in this healthy way and this minimal way. Not eating too much will just make you feel better overall, can prevent excess weight gain, and can also save money because you don't have to prepare as much. And it really helps you reflect on like listening to your body. And then finally, ethical, which is what Jake mentioned too. So thinking about the values that you share with foods. Because what I think I tend to see is that it's typically the healthier people who care more about the ethics behind their food. Would you say that's a true?
I would probably.
I don't have any studies to back that up, but that's just kind of my perception.
Or at least, at the very least, you know more about it, because I think the two are kind of linked hand in hand in a way. I mean, what's going to be some of your healthier options oftentimes are going to be more ethical in terms of like the ingredients and
the production
that are going into it and how it's made. So
absolutely. Because if you don't know what's in them, then maybe you're not as likely to care and be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to buy this, because you don't think about the food as nourishment. You just think about what you want to eat taste wise.
Yeah. Another just general rule I follow: if I don't understand, if I can't pronounce the ingredients in the ingredient list, I don't buy it, because it's probably not very good.
Mm-hmm. But regardless, the minimalist way of eating concept is definitely something that we'll continue talking about on this podcast and on my YouTube channel. We actually have a couple of videos related to the minimalist way of eating on there, but I think this podcast was a chance to really talk more about some of these food-related issues and conversations. So regardless, I hope that you've been enjoying this podcast. If you have, we'd love for you to leave a rating or review or subscribe to it so you automatically receive your next episode in iTunes without having to do anything. So whether you're listening in a car or while you're doing chores or while you're exercising, whatever it is, we really appreciate it and hope that you're getting some value out of this. There's still a few more days left in the month of May on the YouTube channel, Abundantly Minimal. We're doing videos every single day related to minimalism for May, so you can feel free to check those out as well. Otherwise, though, thank you guys so much for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.